Hi folks, this video is about the start date of the IEP. As you know, parents must have the written notice in their hands for 7 days to consider determinations. If the start date of the IEP is in the written notice, this team is beholden to that determination. If the written notice goes out to the parents after the start date, input from all team members is needed to change the determination, and an amended written notice is needed to document that change. To ensure parents have 7 days prior written notice, please follow these steps. If the parent agrees to waive his or her rights to 7 days prior written notice, you must make that statement in Section 1 of the written notice. Parents waive their right to 7 days written notice. Stating the start date of the IEP by itself is not sufficient. Without this statement, with the start date, you will need to go back to the IEP team to get input on a change and write an amended written notice. So you can see in this example here, we've written right here, the parent waives his right to 7 days written notice. The IEP will begin on the next day. This IEP was written on the 11th of December. The IEP is going to start on the 12th. If the parent does not agree to waive his or her rights, or the parent does not participate in the meeting, or it's an initial eligibility meeting, the IEP must start 7 days after the parent has had the written notice in his or her hands. Do not write the start date of the IEP in the written notice in these cases. The Department of Education has stated it is not required to write the start date of the IEP in the written notice unless the parent waives their right to the 7 days written notice. If you do write that date in the written notice, and the written notice gets to parents later than the IEP start date, you will need to go back to the IEP team to get input on a change and write an amended written notice. So an example is this. The meeting was on the 11th of December. This team is going to decide that the IEP is going to start 10 days from today. The team agreed this IEP will begin on 12/21/18, thinking that we've got 3 days to get the written notice to the parent, and they have it for 7 days in their hand, and then the IEP will start on the 21st. And you write your IEP start date for December 21st. But then there's a delay, and you don't get to finish this written notice, and the date that it's sent to parents is the 20th. If that's the case, what will happen is these parents will have this written notice in their hands for 1 day. That's not adequate because the parents did not waive their right to 7 days written notice. And when we review this, what will happen is you will need to go back to the IEP team, get input from everyone, including the parent, that it's okay for this IEP to now start 7 days from the time they receive it, which it goes in the mail on the 20th. They get 3 days. That's the 23rd. Another 7 days is the 30th. Get input from everyone. The IEP now starts on the 30th of December. You have to document that in an amended written notice. Don't want to have that occur, then unless the parent waives their right to 7 days written notice, do not put this statement in there. It's not required. Okay. Right now, what we do not require is the use of the optional 7-day waiver form. We mention it in this video because you'll see a date at the bottom of the written notice, this date right here. Filling that date in by itself is not adequate to document the parent has waived their right to 7 days written notice. If you fill this date in, you must complete the 7-day waiver and have the parent sign it. And you'll see it's completed by you populating Section 1 of the written notice with the determinations. So, Section 1, here are the determinations. Your 5th determination is the parent waived their rights to 7 days written notice. And then you would go to Forms, 7-day waiver form, print preview, and you'll see here are the determinations made in Section 1. There's the parent waived the right to 7 days written notice. The implementation date is the date in that 7-day waiver box. You would print this out, have the parent sign it. It would go in the file and be sent to parent, a copy of it along with the written notice. So all of this information is in the Special Ed Facts, which you will find on our webpage under Paperwork Resources, Sped Facts, Table of Contents, item number 13, the written notice. You'll click on here and the document will show up, and you go down, to item 7, and it describes everything we just talked about the IEP starting 10 days after the written notice has been sent to parent. So the parent has 7 days with the written notice prior to the changes being implemented, and 2 scenarios. When the parent waives the right to 7 days written notice, and here's some screenshots of the waiver form, or scenario number 2, when the parent does not have an opportunity or chooses not to waive their right to 7 days written notice. I hope this was helpful. As always, if you have any questions, please let John or I know. Thanks.